Greetings and welcome to In-Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. Now, sometimes you can let knowing and being get in the way of each other. Now, Carnival is one such site of that kind of contestation. But a lecturer at the School of Humanities and Social Sciences at the University of Technology in Jamaica, Dr. Kai A. Barratt, she has, I think what she's done is aim to simultaneously increase that level of conflict while understanding it, because she recently co-authored Playing Tourism Mass, the Functions and Dysfunctions of Carnival in Jamaica. We talked to her about it now. Dr. Barratt, how you do?
I'm well, thanks for having me.
No, I really want to get into the rabs a little bit, but let's start off by just asking about the inspiration for this work. Thank you. What is the thing that led you to say, okay, well, this is something that needs to be discovered or looked at in an academic sort of way, as opposed to just old talk, rum talk, or something that is not literally put down in black and white, that we can build the conversation off of in an academic sort of way?
Good question. I think as someone who is, who studied cultural studies and communication and media for a long time, what I have learned is that people think, well, carnival is just something we do every year, and it should be taken seriously as a subject of study. And this is something that I've taken up for probably the last 15 years. And not just me alone, but we have a great number of academics from a while now, just taking Carnival as a serious subject of study, getting research done, publishing, getting the information out there, and particularly a group of scholars from the Caribbean, those based in the Caribbean. So I think that was also important, being a Caribbean scholar and getting our work out there. And the particular text, it's called The Dynamics of Caribbean Tourism, and the authors are from different Caribbean countries. So it was important for us to include something about Carnival in there, because we can see, Carnival taking different directions, tourism being one of those. It was important for us to make that contribution.
And you're giving that explanation, and my pause are raising, because all I'm thinking about, or the thing that I'm thinking about the most, is until the lions tell their tales, those stories will always favor the hunter. And having that insider knowledge, and even the fact that the authors from different parts of the region, I think bringing that insider knowledge together is something that is very beautiful. And because unless we write ourselves into these spaces, it feels as though we will be on the periphery of our own existence sometimes. But is that 15 years, that's something you've been doing?
Probably more. Probably more if I count all my graduate study and undergraduate study. But yes, this is something I've been doing for a long time. And as I stated, we have to get more Caribbean scholars out there, particularly those based in the Caribbean, and just to get our work acknowledged in the same way, that we're not just, going to feds and writing about it, but we're doing a rigorous academic interrogation of the festival from different perspectives.
And with that in mind, though, what is the process like building, I guess, a cachet of persons that you can cite? Is it a little different to other types of study that you would do, as opposed to just the way that you would have said, it's not just going to feds and writing about it? But what are differences, if any, in the process of research that you bring to the fore, that for this thing to be established in its own right?
Well, one of the things that I personally like is the ethnographic approach, which is basically just going into the space and doing rigorous observations. But what I tend to do differently now is introduce a quantitative element All right. So in this particular work that we did recently, we approached it from different perspectives. So we had observations in the space, we spoke to stakeholders, and also used data from a questionnaire, an online questionnaire that was distributed to, people who participated in the carnival in Jamaica in that particular year.
And that way, the
So
way
what
that
we
it
found
is.
is that bringing these multiple perspectives give it, a rigor that would give, the subject more credibility and reliability, and for others to follow that model as well.
And that's one of the things that I'm listening and I'm saying this feels robust. It like it can stand on itself. And sometimes that is what people would use to try to not even denigrate, but say, is this all that it's supposed to be? But I think that you've just answered that question. But in terms of that work that you've done on this one specific, looking at some of those major distinctions in focus as an imported product, because you spoke about tourism mass, and I think that word may be very important, but that imported product rather than one that is homegrown in terms of like the Jamaican carnival experience versus one like in Trinidad and Tobago. What are some of those major distinguishing marks?
Well, there are so many, but and Dike, as someone who was on the campus that at the University of the West Indies Bona campus, that carnival there was always a big thing for us. So that is always the starting point when we talk about carnival in Jamaica. The Trinidadian and Tobagonian students from other Eastern Caribbean countries, they initially were the ones who brought the carnival here on the campus because anywhere Trinity go there's always a carnival, right? So that was really where things started. So I think that is a major difference there. Um Not a difference, but a marker, as you say, that the campus, university campus, is an important aspect of the development of the carnival in Jamaica. And then also just like with any other carnivals, people who came to Jamaicans who came to Trinidad, say during the 80s, 90s, but they wanted something in Jamaica that was similar. So we had you know, um, so one of the markers there is that it comes from that elite class or upper class people who the well-off Jamaicans who were able to afford to go to Trinidad, have the experience, and then want to replicate that experience in Kingston. So this is where we talk about Byron Lee and the Orange Carnival and those kinds of people. So that would be the instrumental thing. So it's something that it was on the university campus. And then now beyond the campus, we have the well-off Jamaicans trying to replicate that experience in Kingston. So it is something that was really more popular among a certain group of people rather than say all Jamaicans. And another thing is that it is specifically located in Kingston. So it's not really a Jamaican festival per se. Although you'll see some events in Rios, um in St. Thomas, I believe, but most of it happens in Kingston, probably in the corporate area as well. Another marker is that it adopts many elements of the Trinidad and Tobago Carnival. It is almost a replication, right? It is imported. It is not really indigenous to Jamaica, although if we look at it historically, we could look at things like the John Canoe, which has history in masking and so on. But what we call carnival in terms of the mask, the music, steel pan, juve, all of those activities here, something very much important from Trinidad. And another thing that is interesting, we see, especially in recent times, the influence of Trinidadian designers, um, the Trinidadian bands, the DJs, the artists. So Trinidad has a heavy presence in the carnival in Jamaica.
And it makes me want to go down the rabbit hole, although we're not going to do it in this conversation, of carnival as a product versus carnival as a living ritual, something that comes from within versus something that comes from without. But what I will want us to go down in terms of looking at was that ontology, that set of concepts and what it is they mean and how it is they relate to each other. Just read and spell for me a little bit, because I know that one of the things that you and your co-author Melville Cook would have used was Stuart Hall's theory of articulation. So give me the basis of what is that and how it kind of ties into the work. Thank you.
How it ties into the work, we wanted to look at perspective, particularly again from a Caribbean theorist that speaks to um, that idea of a cultural product, a cultural experience that is not indigenous to a particular space, but yet enjoyed by so many, and yet is becoming even part of the country's tourism offerings, right? So this is where we use the articulation, right? So there is an articulation happening between what is considered non-indigenous, which is the carnival, the Trinidad style carnival, and a space that has basically no ties to carnival, being the Jamaican space. I mean, this is the land of reggae and dancehall, as well as the tourism offering is based mostly on the sun sea type of destination tourism. So we use that theory to look at how this product, right, the Trinidad style carnival is being, accepted and included in their festival tourism offerings. And it's actually working, right? It's actually working in the sense that they are now able to offer something um that tourists, particularly what we would call the diaspora tourists, which would be people of Caribbean descent living in the Caribbean diaspora. So it's something that they are now attracted to. And because even if it's in Jamaica, which does not have any carnival ties or history of carnival, it's still attractive to them because of what is being offered. And what is being offered, that idea of revelry, celebration, release, all of the things that are attached to that commercial interpretation of the festival.
And on that, we
So
take a short break.
Stuart Hall was very useful in us for putting that together, those ideas together.
And I'm always glad when you're able to work on the shoulders of a Caribbean theorist to build on an issue that is intrinsic to the Caribbean. But we take a short break. We return with more. We are speaking with Dr. Kai A. Barratt about the functions and dysfunctions in the Jamaica tourism mass. So stay with us. We return with more. Welcome back. We are speaking with Dr. Kai A. Barratt, lecturer at the University of Technology in Jamaica. She would have co-authored with Melville Cook the Playing Tourism Mass, the Functions and Dysfunctions of Carnival in Jamaica. Now, I want to ask, though, those functions and dysfunctions, because it seems as though Carnival as a nexus for this multiplicities of self allows for so much to happen simultaneously, and things can be taking place within themselves, in opposition to themselves. What are some of the, it seems as though even though it's imported, it's still found its way into Jamaica. So what are some of those functions? What are some of the dysfunctions?
Well, most important function, carnival is fun, right? Carnival, in one aspect, we know carnival brings people together. It allows us to take a break and celebrate. And that's no different what we see happening here in Kingston for their carnival period. And as we were saying, in terms of developing their festival tourism product, it has been working, right? So they are figures to support the number of visitors, um, and the benefits to the entire ecosystem in terms of accommodation, transport, beauty services, all of those things are working it as a function of importing the festival here. So, and in Kingston, as you may know, you know, they don't have that kind of tourism offerings like the Sunsea that that you would get in the North Coast, Rios, Montego Bay, etc. So the festival gives Kingston something to offer to visitors. All right, and not just visitors, but also students at the university, people who just enjoy carnival. So it works in that sense. So the entire ecosystem benefits from that festival offering during that period. Um, Also, we know carnival is just about having a good time. And at that time we need that release, right? Especially after Trinidad Carnival, there's a gap between Trinidad Carnival and say the summer carnival. So the carnival in Jamaica fills that gap for those looking, you know, you had a good time at in Trinidad and you're suffering a little tobacco. The carnival in Jamaica, yeah, it helps with that. So it might not be something as extensive as what you'd experience in Trinidad, but it's good to hold you until the next carnival. But on the other hand, we know that when something is not indigenous, a cultural product and experience is not indigenous to a space, it comes with some dysfunctions. And one of the main things that you would hear here is that the there's a kind of rift created between, say, dancehall and soca, or the dancehall culture and carnival, and people believe, well, carnival is given a pass, right? Unlike dancehall, which is chastised in a lot of ways. So we hear that debate constantly, right? People are like, well, if dancehall people dress that way, they wouldn't get that pass, particularly women, right? So that debate is there where they feel it's given a preference. Um, Also, it's not something that touches every Jamaican, right? As I said earlier, it's located within segments of the society. It's a very expensive experience within the Jamaican context in terms of to participate. So hence why it targets tourists because they are the ones who can spend, right? So that the cost of participation excludes a lot of Jamaicans. So that is another important dysfunction. Um, Another dysfunction is that there are little elements of what could be considered Jamaican. So as an imported product, it's almost wholesale per se. So you'd find some people saying, "Oh, we don't want to hear any dancehall. We don't want to hear um, any other Jamaican type elements in the carnival. We just want straight soca." But then on the other hand, some people feel, well, if we want to make this Jamaican, they have to include some aspects of Jamaican culture. So one of the things Melville and I found when we did our survey, particularly among visitors, they wanted to hear more dancehall in carnival, the dance type dancehall, the fun type dancehall. They wanted to hear that at the carnival events. On the other hand, some of the locals, the majority of the locals, that is, they wanted to hear um straight soca. So
How does it, but let me ask the question. How does the artist help bridge that gap, real or perceived? Because when we think of persons like who would have done it way back, like Ras Moses, Beanie Man, who would have been UFO with Marshall, or we have Merciless on the Pigtail Rhythm, more recently, Busy Signal, and conscience, riding soca
Yeah.
rhythms. And so how do they help to kind of broker that arrangement between the persons who want soca, the persons who want more dancehall, and just bringing the two sides together?
And I think that is what has been happening. I think that's the way to approach it. One of the early scholars on Campbell, Jamaica, Hilary Brown, she suggested something called a reggae aesthetic in the carnival in Jamaica, right? But that was in 2005. So um, I think now with artists, and you pointed them out, in addition, you have people like Idonia, Shensia, right, Ding Dong, what the kind of music that they are producing, which is the dancing type dance hall, right, similar to what Elephant Man would have done, is well accepted in carnival events, right? So I think that is really the way to bridge those two genres. Even Charlie Blacks, we hear him on rhythms as well, right? And then even our own soca has sometimes that dancehall sound to it, right? So I think that's really the way of doing it. So what Hillary called a reggae aesthetic, what we probably need to approach now is a dancehall aesthetic in the carnival. And we see it. We see it on the road here when the ding dong songs play, the flair and the leg of the bird and all of these things. The reception is great. And as I said, this is what the visitors hear. I mean, that's what they want to hear. They've been to Trinidad, they're going to Barbados, they've heard these things. But when they come to Jamaica, yes, they like the soca, yes, they like the mass, but they also want to experience something that is, indigenous to Jamaica, which is dancehall. And I think that is really what should happen. Mel and I, we conclude by saying, we need to find a way to balance introducing aspects of dancehall culture into the carnival. And that would probably get more Jamaicans interested in carnival and kind of reduce that kind of artificial conflict that they create between the two cultural products here.
And with that, in closing, I want to ask, well, we have about a minute and a half. I want to ask about the potential legs you see for this work that you and Melville Cook would have done, looking at the impact of the work in Carnival in Jamaica, in Carnival in the region, in Carnival in Trinidad and Tobago. Do you see applications for that? And lay out your parameters as you want to, thanks.
Definitely, because we wrote this work within the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, showing that adopting the Trinidad style model fully is not very sustainable, because what happened during the pandemic, there was nothing to offer. There was nothing, right? It's because people could not travel. Right. And if the carnival was depending on visitors, there was nothing to offer. And I think this is something that we have to look at moving forward. All carnivals in the Caribbean, that balance between, yes, we want visitors there. Yes, we want to make money from it. We want that commercial aspect, because it's a business for many in terms of the ecosystem. But we want to balance it nicely. We can't give up everything that makes, for example, in Trinidad, that makes the carnival in Trinidad a Trinidadian festival. We can't sacrifice that just for some dollars, just to get a cruise ship full of visitors, right? So what is that balance? And I think the stakeholders, they have, and even us as participants, we have to answer that in ourselves. What are we going to support? What are we not going to support? Because at the end of the day, it's all about us. We are the ones who support behind certain events and don't support other events, right? We can't always say, well, the government has to do this and the government has to do that. But we ourselves, our carnival, the carnival came from us, right? So we have to make that decision in balancing what we want this carnival to represent for us and what we wanted to do for us, especially coming out of such a difficult time in the pandemic. I think we learned that a carnival for us and by us is really the most sustainable way to go forward. But are we learning those lessons? I'm not sure. So when we move forward, we'll see.
Like a true educator, you leave the end of that with a question. So we want to thank you so much, Dr. Kai A. Barratt, for the work that you're doing, the work that you continue to do, the investment that you have put into us as a people. And on behalf of the entire TTT News team, this has been In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Thank you so much for joining us.